Good evening and welcome again to Ideas at Work and Beyond. This is an incredible show. The stuff we have prepared here, the illustrious figures we have right in this studio is not to be believed. We have state representatives. We have former United States congressmen that are miraculously throwing their hat back into the ring for one of the highest offices in the country. We have exciting stuff going on. But before we get to that, I have a few things I want to get off my chest.
Oh, boy.
And first off, the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you with small children at home, you may want to put them out of the room because Uncle Marty's a little upset. And I'm upset because the Canadians are kicking our rear end. And it starts with this high school all-star team of Canadians that came down here and played against our beloved Danbury Western Reed college-aged baseball team, and the Canadians kicked our butt in baseball. Right over here. What field do they play on over there?
Is that Rogers Park?
Rogers Park. Right in our own backyard, these Canadian young men came down here and kicked our butt in baseball. They beat us in hockey, that's one thing. But baseball, that's the American game. And they came down and I watched it. And I know Bob Boughton is actually there today. It actually is a pretty fun thing to do, go out and watch the Danbury Westerners play these games. But the Canadians beat us at our own game. Now, if we can go to the cover, I was up in Canada not 2 weeks ago at one of my nieces or nephews. I'm not sure who they are exactly, but they were getting married. There's like 25 of them. Canada has very long, cold winters, so they just make a lot more Canadians. But when I was up there, I picked up a Globe Mail. I don't know if you have that on, you can just show it. Look at this. Private sector fuels stunning surge in jobs. I don't mean to jump to my guest right off the bat, but Jason, help me read that. Private sector. That doesn't say public stimulus money, does it? It doesn't say tax and spend fuels stunning surge in jobs. It says private sector fuels stunning surge in jobs. This is the Canadians. They produced more jobs in the month of June through, again, private sector sector fuels stunning surge in jobs. The Canadian economy through the private sector, not government spending, had an incredible surge in jobs, up 7.9% just in the month of June alone. They produce a Canadian economy, which is dwarfed by the American economy, produced more private sector jobs than the entire American economy did. So, for those of you scoring at home, their all-star team came down here and beat us in baseball. And now their economy, their private sector economy, is beating us in job creation. This, my friends, is a reason for alarm. Now, there is some glimmer of hope because our beloved governor, Governor Jody Rell, if we have that, this is in the New York Post. These are things. I'm looking for those little roots, those green shoots coming up. Connecticut out to poach New York hedge funders. Now, this young lady, our beloved governor, she's inviting them for steaks in Darien, Connecticut. My invitation to move your business here is not only still open, it is earnest. Our beloved governor, right as she enters into the final months of her job, is whining and dining these hedge fund guys. They're luring them from the high-tax states like New York, saying, come here, we want to be, apart from our Attorney General, who isn't exactly business-friendly, we want to be a welcoming, business-friendly state, and that's what our governor is doing. So, Jody Rell, here's a shout-out to you. You keep it up. You keep whining and dining. You do whatever you need to get those hedge funds jobs, get those financial sector jobs, get those private sector jobs that are going to produce real economic growth for the state of Connecticut. Keep them coming. And look at the response of this guy. I'm encouraged that there is a politician who would have such an appreciation for this sector of the financial services industry. That's my new best friend in the world, Timothy Shelby, president of New York Hedge Fund Roundtable. Timothy, come on in. Connecticut is open for business because even the Democrats, some of which are at this table right now, are beginning to see the light and saying it's the private sector, it's welcoming jobs, it's creating a positive business atmosphere that's going to get us out of this recession. So I see hope in the future. Now, moving right along, I am delighted to have an illustrious figure, a veritable celebrity in the local community, Jason Bartlett, state representative, is here. Not only is he here, but he's willing to save whatever oxygen is left in the room after my rant. Now, if we can cut to Al Robinson, we can get a shot of him. Al has actually dozed off. Al, I'm sorry. We're talking about the private sector, Al, and job creation and something other than government taking care of everyone.
You're putting me to sleep.
You must have dozed off. Some of these concepts are a little foreign to you know what we're talking about.
Are you done?
I'm done. I'm done. I go, one last thing. We can cut to the caribou. One last thing. This is a shameless plug at Walnut Hill Community Church right here in Bethel. Oddly enough, it's on Walnut Hill Road. It's in Bethel. There's going to be a wonderful concert this Saturday night. Graham Kendrick, July 24th, Walnut Hill, 7 p.m. This guy is, I guarantee, if you come out. Jason, will you come out? You busy Saturday night?
I'll try.
Jason Bartlett, ladies and gentlemen, will be there to greet you at the door to the Graham Kendrick concert. You heard it here first. I will try. And,
is there any singing?
Yeah, he's a singer. He's a gospel singer. He writes a lot of his songs. He's originally from England, and so he's got kind of an English accent. But please come out. I'll be there, and it's going to be a wonderful night. Okay, I'm done. And I am really very, very grateful for you coming in.
It's great to be here.
I think you're a well-known personage in Bethel and Danbury and the surrounding community. You overwhelmingly win elections against, you know, I don't know, clear-thinking, straight-shooting Republicans get hammered time and time again.
It is a Republican district.
It's a Republican district, yet you seem to, you know, have the hearts and minds of the voters. What do you attribute that to?
I attribute it to people wanting a fighter, wanting somebody that actually represents their interests, and being independent. And every once in a while, Marty, you get my vote on the other side. And
you throw us a bone, do you?
Well, sometimes more than a bone. I'm actually fairly vocal. I'm vocal in committee. You just talked about the hedge fund. There was a bill this last session that wanted to do like a special tax. Was kind of the punishment for some of the scandals, and I voted against it. I was one of the few Democrats that didn't think that we should isolate that particular industry and kind of have a surtax on them. I didn't think it was good fiscal policy. So I stated my position. On the other hand, I think that we have to look at the budget, for example, and have priorities and values and you know, bring some common sense to how we do things. And I think people appreciate that too. So I'm willing to stand alone, but I also think you know, that I represent the district. I have a very interesting district. I have Danbury.
Right.
I have Bethel, which is a kind of a blue-collar, middle-class town, and then I have Reading, where the average home is probably like $750. So it's, you know, it's kind of a complex district to represent. So you know, it's not always easy to, you know, you don't just do a survey in my district.
Right. Yeah, no, I can.
So you know, I have to be independent and really think about these different issues. And you know, I am a small businessman. I've been one for, you know, 15 years, and you know, I understand what it takes to create jobs. And so I have a different approach often.
Yeah, it was a little tongue-in-cheek with the headlines from Canada, and they're beating us in baseball and private sector jobs, and you know, picking out this article about Jody Rell and how she's whining and dining hedge fund guys with steaks in Darien. But you know, all kidding aside, do you agree with that? I mean, do you think that government, yes, has a role to play in job creation, but if everyone is expecting to get a paycheck from the government, you know, where's the private sector? Who's going to be paying?
Well, it's not sustainable if we don't have the private sector, okay? Right. And if we don't grow jobs through the private sector, it's not going to be sustainable. So I look to do that. We passed angel investor tax credits this last year. We're doing some of those things. I'm interested in IT and bringing more IT companies to the state of Connecticut. And we have to change some of our statutes in order to give loans or tax credits to them, because intellectual properties don't always have assets. It's not a brick and mortar type of industry that you can just loan on. So I get that. At the same time, I don't support Republicans who want to cut off unemployment compensation and not extend unemployment benefits for those that are out of work, because those folks that are out of work would like to be working.
Right.
So you don't take an approach and say, okay, no more unemployment benefits for the last 8 weeks or whatever, and people who are living on the edge have no relief. It's shown also economically that by giving some temporary support to those folks, they go out and spend that money immediately, pay their bills, and spend it in the economy. So I don't think it's always black and white. There is some gray in this whole conversation.
All right, so right now you're a United States Congressman. You're voting in favor of extending unemployment insurance indefinitely?
No, I don't think that you don't ever want to be indefinite. We did welfare reform, so we don't want to have welfare for everyone.
And by the way, who was
forever.
the president when we did that?
President Clinton.
Bill Clinton. That's right. You see how you can have a Democrat in the White House when he reaches out to Republicans.
You're coming over to my side now. Look at that.
Yeah, we can all have a kumbaya moment there. It can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because extending unemployment, Barack Obama goes out to the Rose Garden there and has some, looking like very, reasonable people that are looking for jobs, can't find them. And he said, these dastardly Republicans want to cut off unemployment insurance. How can you possibly do that? And yet at the same time, I think there's this issue of the deficit and spending, and people are getting a little nervous about that as well. I don't know.
Well,
it's tough.
Humanely now, I mean, come on. You can't cut off unemployment benefits for people who are like in Ohio or in Michigan like that.
Or in Connecticut.
Or in Connecticut, while you have spending in military, for instance, going right through the roof, and it's still escalating. At some point in time, you got to say what's right here. This is a human dignity thing here, and the argument we're hearing from Republicans is like these people want to be on unemployment like it's a welfare state, which is so outrageous to some of these people out here who have bachelor's degrees and who are struggling to get jobs with bachelor's degrees and struggling working families.
Until we do the first part, which is actually grow the private sector and have jobs for people to get, you can't expect them to survive. So we're going to go through a transition. I think the economy is going to grow. At what point that really takes off, I don't know. But as a legislator and somebody who has to make priorities, you just don't say, okay, let's cut off unemployment. I'd rather see us in the state, for example. I think our job going forward is, how are we going to re-engineer government? How are we going to streamline government? How are we going to cut back? But at the same time, we're not going to wipe out, vouchers for subsidized housing, or shut off somebody's energy voucher during the winter when it's 0 degrees outside. That's not the kind of thing that I think that we should be doing.
Isn't that a bit of a straw man argument, though? I mean, is there anyone really talking about?
We debated it. We've debated it. We've debated it.
Because I mean, when I look at what's going on in Hartford, and I basically read the paper and talk to people. You're there. You're in the trenches. But I see essentially runaway spending, unsustainable spending. We have a budget deficit now that's up into the billions of dollars. And there really
is the deficit a result of runaway spending and everyone going amok, or is it the result of maybe some of your hedge fund friends not, securitizing things that shouldn't have been securitized, and playing with paper on Wall Street and creating somewhat of a crisis in the real estate and so on and so forth? So it's
your friends, I thought it was kind of like Senator Dodd was
just
talking
invited
about,
this guy here. I don't know who he is, but you want to go out and have cocktails with him at the steakhouse.
Well, no, the governor. That's her job.
It sounded like you actually wanted to be at the table for some.
No, I think she's doing a fine job. She's saying, "Hey, Connecticut, we're open for business. Come on in." I mean, the same way we got UBS.
Yeah, but how about we're open for business and stem cell research, and open for business and creating, more health care, which is a growing, emerging industry, or, an enterprise.
Open for business in the film
enterprise zone. I've supported the film tax credits.
That's a beautiful thing.
I think that has to be looked at and make sure that we're actually have a labor force that can take advantage of it in the state, and that's what we worked on last time, because you have a tax credit and some middleman is making all the money, and we don't get any jobs here, and they're all imported. That's not good. But yes, those are the kinds of areas that, and I appreciate, listen, I have friends in Lower Fairfield County that are representatives that represent these folks, and that's why I voted against that bill.
Yeah.
Because, if we're going to raise the income tax on the wealthiest, we have to have the wealthiest here.
I'm telling you, you cannot, like
that would
Abraham
help.
Lincoln said, you cannot raise up the wage earner by tearing down the wage payer. And just, you talk about Lower Fairfield County, there's one town in Connecticut that pays 17% of the state taxes. You know what that town is?
I'm going to guess it's not Greenwich.
It's Greenwich,
It is
Connecticut.
Greenwich, okay.
Greenwich, Connecticut.
I figured it was a trick question, Marty.
And last time I drove through Greenwich, it looks like, so, before we go, kicking the rich guys and saying, oh, those dastardly rich guys are so bad, they're the ones that are paying a lot of the freight. And I think we need to, be conscious of that.
Well,
go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I love your taking your position on certain issues. But one of the great things about what you've done here in your last term, at least from my perspective, it's been a really great thing that you're well known for in this area, more importantly across the state, is your stance on education. You did some major legislation up there at the General Assembly that addresses a lot of concerns in regards to education. So why don't you just give us a brief recap of what you've done in the last session?
Well, I think in the area of education is really where I can demonstrate that I am an independent thinker and that try to reform education and raise the standards here in the state of Connecticut. In the Ridgefields, the Reddings, the Bethels, and even Danbury, every election cycle, my opponent says, we only get 2 cents back on the dollar for every dollar we spend or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're screaming about that and say, oh, it goes to Bridgeport and goes to Hartford.
Have you looked
Where's
at
it
the
going?
board? Have you looked at the
Let
Board
me
of
finish
Education
It wasn't
budgets?
an opening for you, Marty. Let me finish my point. And the point is that, I hear that, and I do hear what's being said, and I say, well, where are we spending that money? And we're spending that money on education and in failing schools.
Right.
Yeah.
So my legislation was to reform how that money was spent and to bring accountability in education in every failing school, of
Kind of
which
like
we
No Child
identified
Left Behind.
186. Well, No Child Left Behind just did a lot of testing and gave us how to look at a school. What we
That was
are
our
looking
beloved
to do,
education president, George W. Bush. Sorry,
That's
go
right.
ahead.
And what we're trying to do is bring some accountability and force reform so that if we're going to spend those dollars for education, which is very important, that we actually get something, we're getting something in return. And so we did a historic education reform bill this last session, which gave a lot of control to parents in every failing school in the state of Connecticut.
Right.
We raised the standard. We didn't have advanced placement, for example, in 36 school systems in the state of Connecticut.
Right.
Every school system will have to have advanced placement. We did alternative routes for certification for principals and school leaders. We tied teachers' evaluations with the achievement of the student over the course of a year, which is President Obama's initiative, I think, nationally. We adopted it here in the state of Connecticut. So there were, 8 to 10 different bullets in this education reform, and it's totally changing how we approach education. We raise the standards in every school in order to graduate high school, where there's more math courses, more science courses, and foreign languages included. That kids have to do a capstone project in order to graduate. And we hope to get the Race to the Top dollars, which is about $200 million. We talk about a deficit. The first place that people are going to look to cut and save money is in education.
Right.
So it's very important to have some of these reforms so that we could get the $200 million into Connecticut so that we can keep moving up, because I don't want to move backwards from where we are. We want to move forward, because I believe that education is part of why a company would come to the state of Connecticut and actually have good jobs, because that's what it's all about. And if we don't have the education system here in the state of Connecticut, you're not gonna track, whether it be hedge fund companies or healthcare companies.
United Technology or hedge fund
We've got to keep these folks here.
I think one of the big things, me coming from Hartford, I can recall I graduated in 1987, so I graduated with friends who came from Hartford Public, from Weaver High School, from Bloomfield High. I went to Northwest Catholic myself, so I was fortunate to have a private schooling. But I can't tell you how many of my friends, majority of them minorities, either dropped out of school or somehow graduated, can't even spell their names. You know how that thing goes. And the education system back during the late 80s were just so bad. And you look now, and it's still terrible. In fact, if I'm correct, Connecticut has one of the worst achievement gaps in the nation, which is incredible for...
We have the worst achievement gap in the nation.
Yeah, so I applaud for a lot of the efforts you have done to address that, including like increasing the age for dropouts and the stuff you're doing to address a lot of the achievement issues.
So if this education system is so bad, would you be in favor of a voucher program where you have private, like Catholic education, where some monies can go to that if those schools are doing a better job? Or are you beholden to the teachers union and so you wouldn't dare step on that third rail?
Well,
it's just us.
Let me say this. I
ahead.
took a lot of bullets this particular year from the teachers' unions, both, for all of the reforms that many of the reforms that we've actually put through.
So the answer is no.
The answer is
We're
that
keep
I look at every
this money
issue.
at the
No. What I'm for
education
is
system.
choice. Okay.
Okay, great.
So
let's choose like Catholic schools.
Yeah, fine. But I'm not for vouchers. But I do think that we need. Am I off?
You can just, no, hold it up.
I do think that we need to have, more choice in Connecticut. And what we did was we lifted the cap for charter schools, and next year we're going to look at how education is actually funded, so that perhaps in the greater Danbury area we could have a charter school here and have more choice for kids. So that's going to get reformed, and you're going to see more opportunities for kids in the state of Connecticut to attend different schools of their choice that might fit, whatever their interest is in curricula. So we don't have to do vouchers per se.
Well, real quick.
Union votes are going to keep coming in.
I don't know. Well, although I did get endorsed by the American Federation of Teachers.
Go figure. Who saw that coming?
You did a lot of great stuff for education, and like I said, it's the evidence is out there. It's overwhelming. But there's a lot of other issues that are happening within your district, and one of the issues that I personally have, and I've always had for a number of years, is transportation, especially that godforsaken Metro North line. We're ever going to get that thing up in New Milford. We're going to get that thing electrified. What do you see as the future of transportation in your area in regards to getting more people onto the rail, getting more people off the roads, or actually paving some more roads in Bethel, by the way? What are your thoughts on that?
Roads, let's not talk about
How Bob Burr sorted that all out?
Oh, boy.
Your friend Bob did all that. Great roads in Bethel.
Stony Hill.
No, I'm definitely for upgrading the rail line. I understand my opponent was on a couple weeks ago and said it was going to cost a couple $1 billion. That's not really the case. We need to electrify the line. We need to bring it up to New Milford. It's going to cost some money, but it's worth the investment. And again, to bring private sector jobs to this area, you have to have an infrastructure. And right now, to have to get in your car and drive over to Brewster or somewhere in New York to jump on the train to go into the city is just not acceptable. And I think it really hurts Greater Danbury that we don't have, a train system that actually moves. It's a putt-putt, it's a diesel, and it has way too many stops. They still have to get out and move the flag and that kind of stuff. The parking is miserable. It's actually one of the reasons why I'm for Ned Lamont. I actually think that he has the best plan in terms of having this business approach and understanding that infrastructure is tied into bringing private sector jobs to Connecticut. So
see,
put in a plug
it's
for
coming
Ned
around,
in the August 10th primary. Him and Jerry Garcia. Let's
Vote
do
row
it,
B.
guys. That's right.
I'm feeling the love.
Not all of row B, but
Listen,
necessarily.
In the lightning round here, really quick, you do have an election coming up, and we have hosted, me and my illustrious co-host here have hosted some wonderful televised debates. And asking, would you be willing to debate?
Absolutely. You don't even have to ask.
Right, you're ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay,
sure.
you have his contact information?
Got it.
We know where you live. We can hunt you down. All right, well, great. We would love to have you back.
Well, it's great to be here again.
I really appreciate you coming in, and we'll look forward to having you come in again.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for putting up with us.
Thanks a lot.
Anyway.
Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then, we've got some exciting stuff's breaking loose here. For the United States Senate race, those of you at home, I'll break it down for you. You got Linda McMahon. She's of the rustling thing, and probably you have about 25 pieces of mail in your mailbox right now. As a matter of fact, Linda McMahon, go check your porch.
Linda McSteroids?
Linda McMahon might be right out on your porch right now, or at least one of her representatives. They'll be wearing a blue polo shirt. Linda McMahon's running for the United States Senate and spending a fortune. Peter Schiff, who predicted that the sun's going to come out tomorrow, and see, the sun came out. I told you it would. He's predicted every single economic downturn since, I don't know, buggies went out when the cars came in. He's a good guy too. But we have this guy right here in our studio, Rob Simmons, who after the break is going to come in because he's kind of going to throw his hat back in the ring, but his hat was never out of the ring. He's going to explain the whole thing to us and explain what it really means to be a decorated Vietnam veteran, as opposed to that other guy who was basically selling toys for tots in suburban Washington, D.C. and claiming to be in the rice paddies fighting the Viet Cong. But more on that next. We're going to take a quick break, and then Rob Simmons will be joining us right here on the set, so stay tuned.
Hi, welcome to Community Access Channel 23. Let's go on inside and see what's going on.
Dream big.
Hey, this is Big T here telling you to dream big.
Hey, at Channel 23, you can dream big and direct your own show.
Dream big!
We want you to all dream big.
We
dream
big.
Cable Access, Channel 23, dream big.
Call us today at 203-792-1265 and find out how you can dream big at Channel 23.
Just a quick update. I was hammering the Danbury Westerners, which is a great baseball team right here in town. Bring the whole family out and you spend like $3.75 and everyone gets a hot dog. But they won tonight 5-1 against?
Sanford, Maine.
Sanford, Maine. So there you go. So come on out. But without any further ado, I'm going to try and shut up because I found a guy that can talk even more than me. Former congressman, former 10-year CIA veteran, former officer of the United States Army who did, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 tours of duty in Vietnam. A man who took really the Connecticut Convention by storm and has his hat in the ring for the United States Senate. Rob Simmons has joined us right here on the set, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marty. It's a pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure. And based on what I just observed for the past few minutes, I'm noticing this seat is very hot. Maybe I can switch and sit where you're sitting.
Our viewing audience are very busy. They can't keep track of all this stuff. I'm trying to break it down. There's so many primaries going on.
Of course.
There's so much going on that people don't really, aren't really, they're out, they're picking up their kids from karate, they're going to Little League games, they're trying to get out of the heat. And so we're trying to break it down for him. But you are running for the United States Senate.
Yes.
You had your hat in the ring.
Yes.
You're in a pitched battle, at least you were, with Linda McMahon,
yes,
who spent, by some calculations, $14 million.
20 in the kitty.
20 in the kitty.
That's right.
She's ready to go. I mean, I think she has some good things to say, but my gosh, how do you compete with that? You have your lovely wife here who's driven you here. Where's the entourage? There she is.
Hey,
all you do is you come with your record,
yeah,
and what you've done for the state of Connecticut, and this concept that, hey, your Senate seat cannot be bought.
Well, and that's really what it's all about. It's a treat to be here, and I've been here before, as you know, and we've had some very good conversations, very insightful conversations. I began the race for the U.S. Senate back in January, February, March of last year, and at the time, nobody said that there would be any opportunity for success. Senator Chris Dodd had been in office for 5 terms. I think he was the longest-serving senator in Connecticut history. He's the son of a senator, served also as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. But I felt that he had strayed from the state and from the principles that we think are important, that he had run off to Iowa and done a variety of other things, which are history now, and that he was vulnerable. And I felt that sooner or later the bloom was going to be off the rose for the Obama administration, and that, of course, has happened as well. And so other people have come into the race. We've had as many as 6 people in the race. Because of my background and experience working as a Republican, being elected as a Republican, I probably bet the farm on the convention. I lost the convention by a few percentage points. And, you know, that was very...
That was intense.
That was very disappointing.
I was there. The arms that were twisted.
Oh, well, there was a lot going on. As you know, there was a lot going on.
I voted for you for whatever
I appreciate
it's worth.
that.
I don't agree with all your positions. This whole abortion thing, we need to talk. But let's just move ahead.
There's a lot to discuss.
Okay.
But you know, the bottom line is, after the convention, I consulted with my family. I said, you know, maybe the best thing to do is just curtail the campaign. We've been at it for over a year. If my party wants somebody else, a new face, if you will, well, then let's give that person the opportunity. So we curtailed the campaign. We scaled back. We let our staff go work on some other campaigns. And I began working for other candidates, traveling around the state, working for other candidates. And but I said I was going to keep my name on the ballot. And as you can see, my name is on the ballot. And I said I'd keep it on the ballot. Never said I'd take it off the ballot. Right. So it's on the ballot. So what's happened? Well, in recent weeks, hundreds of people, as I travel the state, they say, Rob, you're traveling around, you're helping us. What about you? What are you going to do? Are you going to get more active? And I would tell them, I'm on the ballot. And they say, well, we didn't know that. So what I've decided to do is put out a little simple ad that simply says, this primary is important. It's in August when everybody goes on vacation.
Right, August 10th.
All the
I gotta
kids,
get an absentee
my wife's a school teacher. All the kids are out of school.
Yeah.
And it's hot, and nobody's focusing. But look at this: the Republican Party alone has 5 primary sets of five primary candidates.
Right.
So it's important.
Right.
And my point is to say these choices are important. Because the choices that you're making are going to determine who's representing you in Washington, D.C. next year.
Right.
So look at the candidates, and then also look at who's going to be competitive in the Senate race against Richard Blumenthal. Because that's the final contest.
Well, let me just throw something in here real quick. I got 2 polls right here, one from Quinnipiac, the other one from Rasmussen.
Yes.
I think this had a little bit to do with your somewhat getting back in this campaign also. The latest, I'm looking at the trend lines, okay, from Quinnipiac, and it shows that, you know, you against Mr. Blumenthal is running right now 55 to 35.
Yes.
While Linda McMahon, who spent, like you said, $20 million into this campaign, is running 54 to 37. Relatively, with the margin of error, is completely equal. And that's basically been the trend since at least May.
Yes.
When you decided to curtail your campaign.
Yes.
Now, Rasmussen, I'm sorry, let me continue on this. 38% of the public feel favorably that Ms. McMahon has the right experience to be U.S. Senator, while 49% disagree and do not feel that she has what it takes to become U.S. Senator. Rasmussen basically is mirroring the same thing as well, showing that Linda McMahon against Blumenthal has 53, Linda has 40. You against Blumenthal 56-33.
Right.
With the margin of error, that isn't that far off, again, considering that she spent $20 million in this campaign. You had the Vietnam flap that came out, and you have not basically spent no money whatsoever. You're relatively running the same.
That's right.
How much of that was a factor in you being more vocal and coming out with this TV ad right now?
That is somewhat of a factor with me, but I can assure you that's a factor with people that were calling me. And I find myself in a very unusual situation. Have you ever heard of Governor Lowell Weicker? Senator Lowell Weicker, the last Republican senator we had. Well, he and I have had our differences over the years. In fact, I voted against his income tax, and he didn't appreciate it. And yet he is publicly calling me to get more active in the race. Have you ever heard of Ann Coulter, the syndicated columnist who actually grew up in New Haven, Connecticut? She's calling for me to get back in the race. Now, she's somewhat on the right of the spectrum, and Governor Weicker is somewhat on the left. So if people, prominent people, all across the political spectrum are saying, get more involved, you know, that's a significant issue. And I think they're responding to some of the polling data that you've mentioned. But to me, it's more important than that. It's not just these well-known folks. It's the people that I see in the post office. It's the veterans that I see at veterans events or down at the VFW or the Legion Hall. It's the people who call me, who remind me that I helped them when I was a member of Congress. And, you know, we helped a lot of people. I can't remember everybody. And say, look, you helped me. We want you to run. We know that you'll be a good senator, that you'll live with us, you'll listen to us, as you did as a member of Congress and a state representative. So I think about that, and I also think about the fact that of all of the Republican candidates for all of these big offices, I have the highest percentage of individual donors, 92%. 92%. Now, I raised $3 million over the last year and a half, and that's a significant amount if we didn't have some of these really wealthy people in the race.
Right.
But the number that really sticks in my heart is 92% individual donors. Some of these folks on Social Security, $10, $15, $20, $30. And I've had people call me and say, I don't want my money back. I want you to use it to run. And that hits you in the heart.
Well, do you regret, in retrospect, curtailing your campaign back during May?
No, I don't. I think it was the right thing to do at the time. And I felt it was right to give the other two candidates, who were fresh new faces, maximum opportunity to get out there and strut their stuff. But as you have correctly pointed out from the polls, those numbers aren't moving.
And again, this is what I quoted was just trend lines, which is much different than the snapshot it shows from May up to now.
Those numbers aren't moving.
By the way, if you want to ask Rob Simmons any questions, what his stance are on various issues, why he's getting back in the race, or he never really left the race, our number here is 792-4101, 792-4101, and he'll take any questions you have, so don't hesitate to call in.
Now, another thing that I've talked about a lot, I'm sure Marty knows I've talked about this a lot, and a lot of people are talking about a lot, is Ms. McMahon's experience with World Wrestling Entertainment, wrestling, professional wrestling, and the controversy that surrounds that. How much of that do you think is a factor in her numbers not really moving that much, or relatively, or her negative numbers are being bad? The history with wrestling, I don't think I really need to go into it in graphic detail here, but how much do you think that is a factor in her numbers not really moving as well as she should be moving, considering that she spent $20 million so far in this race?
Yeah, I haven't done any polling on that subject, so it's hard for me to answer with any real sense of preciseness. But let's put it this way. When I was a kid growing up in Connecticut, I had a chance to go over to New London and see Haystack Calhoun and shake his hand. And let me tell you, Haystack Calhoun, he was one big guy.
Big guy, yeah.
And he had a chain around his neck, and he had a horseshoe. It looked like a little piece of jewelry because he was so big. And his wrestling move, it would reach around and grab somebody, and then he'd fall forward on him. Bam, it was over. That's the way I kind of remembered wrestling. But, you know, there's a whole new standard that's been out there that's quite different, that some people, take exception to. Let's put it that way. There's a group of women, I understand, that have organized a group called Mothers Opposing McMahon. Now, I don't know who they are. They don't have anything to do with me, but they obviously have some concern about the product and the fact that the product is marketed to children. And what impact might that have? So I think that's a question she's going to have to answer. My understanding is she's coming up with an ad this week or next week which addresses that issue, but it's a question she has to answer. I've had to answer questions about my Vietnam service. So, this is all part of the process. When I first ran for Congress, I was accused of doing some terrible things in Vietnam that were totally false, but I had to address the issue, and the issue eventually went away because it was not accurate. She's going to have to address this issue, and the thing that surprises me is that she didn't address it right up front when she started running last year. It has kind of come to the forefront as we get closer to this primary. So that's something she's going to have to deal with. You know, when you run for public office, you get examined carefully. They go through everything. My taxes, my finances, my wife, my kid, my I don't know, college degree, associations. Yeah. People have no idea what an invasive process it is. And it's interesting to me that some folks who are doing it for the first time, who come in right in the top slots, kind of have a feeling that, well, you know, you buy some ads and you give some speeches and that's all there is to it. In our country, we examine our candidates carefully. And I think that's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to examine our candidates carefully, to be comfortable with who they are. It's a good idea in public life and for public policy to examine folks carefully. And I recall this week an example of a woman who worked for the Department of Agriculture who gave a speech where a piece of the speech was put on the internet and she got fired.
Right.
Turns out, if you took a second look, that what she was saying was taken out of context. You know, so you have to take a second look to make sure that you know what you're getting when you cast that vote. And that's why I draw attention to the fact that indeed, although I curtailed my campaign for several months, I am now back pointing out some of the things that you have mentioned here tonight. And that, yes, I am a candidate. I am on the ballot. I've been on the ballot since the primary, and I'm very competitive against Richard Blumenthal. And part of the reason for that may be this. That's a Vietnam campaign ribbon with 4 service stars. That's a Vietnam service ribbon. I did serve in Vietnam. And he didn't, but he said he did. And that raises questions. And that brought him very substantially down in the polls. Now, he's popped back a little bit. But that's an issue where he and I can really differentiate. He says that lawsuits create jobs. Maybe if you're a lawyer. Are you a lawyer?
No.
No. Are you a lawyer?
No, I'm not.
Maybe if you're a lawyer, but I don't think lawsuits create jobs. In fact, I think Governor Relp is going to be having a heck of a time getting the hedge funds to Connecticut, and I'd love to have them here, because we have too many lawsuits, and we have an attorney general who's not friendly for business, and our taxes are too high, and oh yes, people target towns like Greenwich. Towns like Greenwich and Stamford and Darien create wealth for the state of Connecticut. They create it. They don't need to be demonized.
I agree.
And let me give you an example. You know about Foxwoods Casino in Mohegan Sun.
I've heard of that. I've seen the billboards.
You've been there. Probably thrown a few coins in the bucket.
Well, it's a blackjack. I stick on 16. That's
you've been there. And everyone talks about the millions of dollars that they bring to the state of Connecticut. Well, it's around $400 million. In a good year, Greenwich brings in $600 million.
Wow.
That one town brings in more revenue to the state in a good year, and we've had some bad years, than Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun combined. That gives you a sense of how they do help the state, and yet they're constantly being picked on, pinged on by other communities.
All right, let me just talk some raw politics here.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. I know this is like, you know, a big love fest here, but let me ask you some questions.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Did you not say that you were going to abide by the convention and that whatever they say you'll do, and that if these other guys won, they were going to have a primary anyways, but you weren't? You were going to abide by that. Did you say that? I'm not asking like I know the answer.
I propose.
Help me with my recollection.
If you go on my webpage, you can read my statement. Okay. And the statement's been posted for 2 months, and nobody has quibbled about the statement that I made until now. And what I said in the statement was that out of respect for essentially what the party leadership did at the convention, I was going to curtail my campaign, okay, and and scale back campaign activities. Now, what did that mean? I let my staff go. I stopped fundraising. I stopped issuing press releases. I stopped doing a range of activities because I needed secretarial support and support for doing my filings. I kept a clerk on payroll, but that's not an unusual thing to do. The campaign headquarters actually closed, and she does her work out of her home. I also said that I was going to travel around the state and help Republican candidates. But I also said I'm going to keep my name on the ballot out of respect for the 46% of the delegates who did support me, and out of respect for the 14,000 that had contributed to my campaign and the many others who have supported me over the years. So I did exactly what I said I was going to do.
All right, I'm not.
And I know that there's at least one other campaign out there that is fussing about that. But, you know, they have to understand that primaries are part of the process. If you want to call me a spoiler, and I'm not, what about Peter David Schiff and Doug Dubitsky and Ross Garber and Lisa Wilson Foley and Michael Fideli and Oz Griebel and Janet Peckinpah? None of them won the convention, but they all fairly and legitimately got on the ballot. So this is what the process is all about.
Now, okay, here's kind of a theory, and I guess I'm asking you to, yeah, it's cable access. We don't have a really big budget. But basically, I mean, when you look at this economic juggernaut that is Linda McMahon's campaign and the amount of financial firepower that they bring, if you look at post-convention before the primary, let's just say there's 3 months, and you're saying, well, I don't got the firepower to fight for 3 months. But if we really turn the heat up, I can fight for 3 weeks, and we can do something here. Was this like a master plan, or honest to goodness, cross your heart, hope to die? Were you an Eagle Scout?
No.
You just had that Eagle Scout image. I thought maybe you were. But honest to goodness, can you tell us that this was really a legitimate, you know, just going to the different events and people saying, hey, I want you, that now here in the 8th inning, the bottom of the 8th, you're throwing your hat back in the ring, so to speak, although you'll say it was this a master plan, or did this really just come to you?
I'd like to think that I'm not smart. I'm not sure that I'm that smart. Different people have alleged different things. But I can tell you that the weekend after the convention, my wife and I sat in the living room of our house with my son and my daughter, and I read to them a statement that I had written. And that statement, essentially, with the exception of a few words, is the statement that I delivered to the media the following Tuesday and posted on my webpage. I am proud to be a Republican. Now, you don't hear that a lot in Connecticut, but I'm proud to be a Republican. And I have worked in the trenches for the Republican Party in this state for many years. I've been a Republican fighting for Republican values when we didn't have a chance. And that's, I believe in the Republican principles of freedom, free enterprise, personal responsibility, conservation of our natural resources, promotion of economic freedom and power through free enterprise. All of these values are my values. But I also felt disappointed that for all of the work that I've done and for the races I've won, I was the only candidate that ever won a race in Connecticut, that my party wanted a fresh face, a new face. Okay, well, I suppose I could go down to the plastic surgeon and have a little work done, but that's not my style. So I accepted that because I heard a lot of people tell me that. She has the money and she's a fresh face. Peter Schiff has money, he's a fresh face. Fine.
This is a year of the outsider.
This is the year of the outsider.
You know, all your experience might be working against you.
Might be, and so fine.
Throw the bums out.
I will do what I love to do, which is go around and help my fellow Republicans, and I've done it for years. I will let my staff go because there's no point in dragging them through a difficult period of time. You can't, when you don't have the party nomination for the convention, it's harder to raise money. So we'll just curtail and let people go and do our thing and see what happens. Well, what happened? You pointed it out in the polls. Nothing happened. 2 months went by. All we got was some more flyers in the mail. The numbers didn't change. I didn't see any debates. I didn't see the candidates traveling around to the different districts and challenging each other with ideas, even to the point that I called Peter Schiff a few weeks ago and said, "Peter, why aren't you debating?" He said, "Well, Mrs. McMahon doesn't want to debate me." I said, "Well, schedule it anyway, and show up and debate an empty chair."
We're going to be here. That's exactly.
He said, "Well, I don't know. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me." So then I told him a week ago. I said, "Look, I will show up at any debate that you have." And I'm just going to focus on the issues. And one of the most important issues that I'm going to focus on is who can beat Dick Blumenthal and why. And I think we can beat Dick Blumenthal because I think people are unhappy with the policies coming out of Washington, D.C. Unemployment is up way beyond the 8%. The stimulus packages have not worked at all. The new financial services regulation bill guarantees that we will pay taxes for another bailout for companies too big to fail, and that's a disgrace. Companies too big to fail and small business too small to save. Small business is the backbone of our economy. 70% of all new jobs created by small business, they got zilch under the stimulus package, and now they're confronted with health care costs and new taxes with the expiration of the Bush tax cuts. So what we see is a system that's out of balance and out of kilter. And Republicans like me and others have solutions, and these need to be debated and they need to be discussed because this primary is important. And that's what motivated me to get back.
If you pull this off, would this be the greatest Republican comeback in the history of the Republican Party?
Well, I would argue that any Republican comeback is great.
Especially the state of Connecticut.
Yeah, I mean, especially in Connecticut.
I mean, here we are. What do we got? Like 20 days till the
20
primary?
days. 20 days. But look, there's nothing devious here. It's all what you see is what you get. And that's usually what you get from me. What you see is what you get. And I like to talk the facts. And the facts are, and my wife is here, and she'll nod and say, that's exactly what happened. But, you know, for a couple of months,
this whole living room with the kids, the letter. Was
I know it sounds corny.
Yeah, she's making the violin stroke over there. Yeah.
It sounds
she's
corny.
Heard this all before.
But we do corny. We do corny, and it all starts and ends in the heart of the candidate and in the family. Because if the heart of the candidate and the family aren't into the race, then it's not going to work.
All right, let me ask you this. August 11th, right? The primary's on the 10th.
10th.
August 11th, if history repeats itself, the sun will rise. And the votes will be counted.
Yes.
And then what happens? What happens if Linda McMahon, that juggernaut, continues? Will you support the candidate at that point?
Absolutely. No, I mean, look, I believe that at this time in our history, we need to offset some of the policies and programs that are coming out of Washington, D.C. with an alternative philosophy. I believe in free enterprise. I believe in freedom. I believe in the entrepreneurial spirit of the American people. But I believe that small enterprise can grow us out of this, But I believe that businessmen and women are cautious. They're concerned. They don't know when the next shoe is going to drop. And that's not a good thing.
Let me just have just one last raw politics. Did you and Peter Schiff split a certain percentage of the vote, or somehow? I mean, how does this all work? Well, it seems like McMahon has her block, and
what happens is when you go into the ballot or into the voting booth, and you've got the ballot for the U.S. Senate candidate for the Republican Party, you've got 3 people,
right? And
you pick one of the 3.
Can I ask you why you're on line C as opposed to line B?
Alphabetical.
Oh, it's alphabetical. That's why. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
See, now in the Army, being a Simmons was always a problem because I was the last one into the chow hall.
Right. Right.
But you know, when it came time to volunteer for KP, and you don't volunteer for KP.
No, I don't think so.
Simmons was the last guy to do KP. So you know, sometimes it works well, and sometimes it works badly.
Well, I think you brought up.
But that's the reason.
I think you brought up something else that I want to touch back on again. We look at all the other. There's a lot of Republican primaries going on, more than I can ever recall in the history of Connecticut here, as long as I've been watching politics.
You're right.
And In the 2nd district, for congressional district, we saw debates happening. In the 4th, we saw debates. In the 5th, we saw debates amongst Republicans. We don't see a Republican debate between the candidates running for U.S. Senate, which is a little bit of a concern to me. Would you entertain or would you agree to do as many debates as possible with Ms. McMahon and Ms. Schiff? Have you reached out to the McMahon campaign in terms of doing debates and
we
if you're
have
responsible?
Peter Schiff has organized several debates. I've accepted his invitation and said I would be there for those, and I will wait and see what happens. But
when is that debate?
Next Tuesday, Trinity College is a income tax-based debate. On Thursday at Asnuntuck Community College over in 2nd Congressional District is a 2nd debate. And in fact, I heard this evening, that on the Sean Hannity show, the radio show this afternoon, Sean Hannity said that he would invite me onto the show, but also wanted Mrs. McMahon to come onto the show. So I'm ready to reinvigorate the process by my participation.
So you're back in this race. You're never gone, but you're back in 100%.
I believe that it's a competition of ideas. Money is important, but money is not totally and completely important. If that was the case, we wouldn't have a convention, we wouldn't have a primary, we'd simply have the presentation of somebody's stock portfolio, and whoever had the biggest portfolio, you get the seat. You know, I believe that races are to be won and lost, not bought and sold.
Okay.
My guest this evening has been Rob Simmons, former United States Congressman, former CIA agent. Some have said this is James Bond meets Howdy Doody. Forget the Howdy Doody part, but it's somewhat true. And also an officer in the United States Army and served in Vietnam. He has the ribbons to show for it. He's running for the United States Senate against Linda McMahon and Peter Schiff. This is interesting. Now, if you haven't been focused on all these primaries, now's the time. We're down to the last 20 days. So look at these guys. Go on their website. Go to their information. Look at them and see, because Republicans have an interesting opportunity here. Again, the primary is August 10th. If you're going to be out of town like I will be, get the absentee ballots and make sure that your voice is heard, because this is a unique opportunity where there are going to be some real choices, not just federally, but here in the state of Connecticut, you have an opportunity to have your voice heard. So I want to thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you.
This is one of the first places you've come and made this announcement.
That's
so
right.
It's a bit of a coup. We really appreciate it. Join us next week when Joe Egan will be on. We have this footage from this ridiculous cliff climbing thing in Switzerland that we might run. Hey, you look at the footage, see if that's doctored. And then August 5th, right here in this studio, we're going to have the 5th congressional debate between Sam Caligiuri, Justin Bernier, and
Mark
Greenberg. Talk about rich guys running for office. They'll all be here, and they will answer your questions. So join us for that. And again, I want to thank Rob Simmons and his lovely wife for coming out. And we hope to see you again.
Thank you.
This could
Look
be
forward to it.
interesting.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.